So hi guys, it is another coding and tools building series for cybersecurity professionals with FixitGearWare Security. As we proceed today to continue the coding series where we build the DNS tool, we want to take a special moment to say a little appreciation for our subscribers on our official YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much. So far, we've been able to cross the 300 mark line, where we have a few of you members who are our family on YouTube and showing some love and support with the views as well. So it's just a little appreciation that we are grateful, and we hope that the momentum which we have been moving on with the past few months, we will continue to keep that momentum, providing good content, listing informations that are very helpful for those who are getting into cybersecurity, and as well showing you the tips and tricks of learning the foundations when it comes to the profession itself. So another part of our rituals, or should we say our traditions, is to get to know how you're doing. How has your week been so far? Have you been able to meet up your goals, your dreams, your aspirations? For quite some time, we've not been asking for those who are looking for jobs. So for those who are looking for jobs, hope you're getting a feedback from the various organizations which you have sent your applications. And if you do, we want to say congratulations. That's a positive impact. It means you're making leadway, and you should keep trying. Don't give up. Don't look down upon yourself. For those who are having rejection emails, please, it happens. Okay, the job market is quite competitive right now, so getting a rejection email is a tradition. Not a funny thing, but it's a tradition you always get to see, especially when you're desperate looking for an offer. So that doesn't mean you should quit. Keep striving, keep learning. And while you're still looking for these jobs, please don't just relax on your laurels. Try and give yourself some personal trainings, not necessarily courses. There are quite a whole lot of free content out there on YouTube for those who are not financially capable to equip themselves. You can get started with those free contents to improve yourself, and have other things you can append to your resume to be part of the skill set you can be able to demonstrate to your prospective new employers. So, having said that, let's just move on to the series for today and get started with the subject matter, which is the continuation of building the DNS resolution tool, which we commenced in our last episode last month with FixitGearWare Security. So just a little recap of last month's coding and building tool series. Last month, we had an overview discussion and presentation of what the DNS resolution tool project is all about. We stated that it's going to be a 3-part series of the building tool segment of the DNS resolution tool, and which we also proceeded to commence the first part in that last episode. Then after we're done, we talked about the second stage of the tool building and its characteristics. So basically, the second stage comprises of this same DNS resolution tool being able to have the flexibility to accept a single domain resolution from the user of this tool, or a multiple domain from the user of this tool, with an additional functionality as well to accept domains that are in text file, or should we say batch text file, where you want to resolve thousands of domains which you have successfully pulled out from your passive recon on the internet. So DNS resolution is a very important tool because when you start looking for subdomains, you start dealing with looking for domains that are capable of zone transfers and so on to get more information about a target. This information can only be pulled after you have resolved these domains and, of course, pull out their name server records. Okay, that's one of the important thing, or the important section or powerful concept of DNS resolution. So still in that same series, we explain what a DNS record is all about and what DNS resolution is, describing the differences of these two keywords, or should we say sentence, to enable you, our viewers or readers or watchers, to have an overview of these two technical terms in cybersecurity. Then after we were done with that, we did a live coding where we demonstrated how a DNS resolution works and how a DNS record is displayed to the user of this tool. In that live coding, we demonstrated this tool to be able to resolve a DNS record of a single domain. And this single domain is a single domain we provided in our tool terminal. And of course, after running the main.py file, then this tool was able to resolve the single domain which we provided in the terminal as well. So after we did that, we promised that to save more time because the year is almost coming to an end, and we also have our C programming course we want to publish. We said the second stage, we are going to round it up so fast by doing the technical explanation like we discussed initially when we started this coding and building tool series. We said if we are going to be talking about complex segments of a code, we do not have to live code them, because during the process of coding these tools, we definitely make mistakes. And debugging codes are complex. It takes time, and it's not something that you can do in a day. Okay, sometimes we take days or even weeks to complete our tools building segment. Then after we're done, we have to now test other functionalities which we think we want to improve in the tool before we can now, certify the tool to be okay to perform optimally for what it was intended for, or should we say we built the tool for. So today we'll be completing that second part of the series, and we will be telling you what this second part is all about and making it clear by describing this code. As we said that the complexities of codes we would be explaining, not live coding, to save time, and of course not create a situation where you will have information flooding or lapses to concentrate when it comes to what we're trying to explain. And in that same series, we talked about deploying our first recon combo tool when we are going to describe the third segment. So the third segment, we are not going to do any live coding. We are not going to do any live demonstration of what every segment of the code is all about. The only thing we are going to do is how to install the tool and how to use this tool when we complete it and how it works. Because at the end of the day, we want to try as much as possible to provide a lot of open source tools and tell you the concept, or should we say the fundamentals behind that tool for you to understand cybersecurity, especially for those who are interested in offensive security or red teaming. Okay, automation is good, but we don't want to make you be so flooded with the concept of automation that everything you do in cybersecurity is automation. Okay, this stems from our exposure with batch scripting, that certain tasks you have to make it automation. It's okay. Automation is perfect. But if you have to do everything you do in cybersecurity as automation, like you want to hunt for vulnerabilities, you want to test for like IDORs, you want to test for XSS, everything about, these various OWASP top 10 is automation, then you're not a red teamer, because automation should be focused more on your recon process and getting, information in bulks. Then you now employ your manual skill set based on your exposure and understanding of these various vulnerabilities. So that's the way we are modeling our own cybersecurity training, to expose you to the fundamentals while telling you where automation is applicable and where automation is not advisable. So at the end of the day, when we are going to deploy this tool, we will tell you what the concept, is all about, or the concept behind the development of this tool, and of course tell you what you now do after you have been able to successfully achieve the automation process using this tool. So having said all this, let's get started with this week's episode of the Coding and Building Tool series with FixitGearWare Security. So you can see over here, we are building the tool under PingSpy. So the combo of this tool will have a few things to do with PingSpy, the first version we released in our previous Coding and Building Tool series. So just be on the lookout when next we have the coding section and building tool series for this tool to be deployed. So previously, sorry, I closed this. This is trying to debug a code. Okay, we'll just leave this for now. So I'll just close this. I would leave this. I could close this. I will close this and I'll close this. Let's just put this here for now. So under the DNS Recon tool, we have previously created 3 files. Okay, the first 3 files we created when we were resolving a single domain was the DNS Info, the domain resolver, and the main.py. So just a recap of this. For the DNS Info, where are you? Okay, we need to close something. Okay, let's close this one for now. So where is the DNS Info resolver and main.py? Okay, so for the DNS Info, okay, in our previous coding section, is the various DNS record we want to look up, you know, when we are dealing with a specific domain. For example, FixitGearWare.com, X.com, Facebook.com. And this record infos comprises of the A records, the quadruple A records, the canonical names, the MX record, the name servers, the TXT, the SOA, the SRV, the PTR, CAA, NAPTR, DNS key, and DS. Okay, so we try to iterate using the for loop for record info in record infos. Okay, then we use an exception to resolve the domain, and of course for that domain we should, you know, resolve the record info, which is this various record infos based on the variable name to iterate across this record infos. Now then it should print the record info. So for the data response, it will print the data to text, except there is no response. Then we call the module, okay, DNS resolver, no answer, no NX domain, no. Of course, we use this DNS resolver timeout to tell us that there's a timeout, and print the information there was no record to that specific, you know, various record infos that were not able to be retrieved. Okay, so we now also put, if there's an unexpected error, then it should state the reason why, you know, the error happened, and of course the record info that was impacted and the domain that was, you know, associated with that error or unexpected error. Then we went to the domain resolve. Okay, so basically when you talk about domain resolve, we explained DNS record and DNS resolution. We said the difference is that if I ask you to give me 100 domain names, you'll be able to, you know, provide these domain names offhand or by heart without, you know, thinking too long or too much. So I can ask you, give me 10 domains right now. I can say, okay, FixitGearWare.com, X.com, Facebook.com, BOA.com, USA.gov, Australia.com, php.net, w3schools.com. You know, all these domains, I can just mention them because either they're associated with .com, .net, or .org. Okay, but we also made a clarity that when a computer is talking to another computer, there is no way it can recognize this domain without resolving them into IP address, because computers talk to one another or to each other by 0 and 1s, which are known as binary numbers. So for them to be able to, you know, understand which of these informations are related to one another, first of all, this has to resolve that domain into an IP address. Then after resolving to an IP address, it's going to try to communicate with the computer that is associated with that IP address. Now, once that computer is reachable, the information that is associated with that IP address will now be portrayed, or should we say displayed back to the person requesting that information. So the essence of domain resolve is to resolve every given domain into an IP address to enable our computer talk to to computer that is associated with that domain name, which the domain name has been resolved into an IP address. Okay, so that's the essence of this domain resolve.py. And of course, we talked about the module socket, and we call the guy error, which is a class that reports an error if the domain is not being able to be resolved. Okay, now in our new code section, we introduced additional files. Okay, this additional files is still the same concept when we did the ping spy, when we wanted to retrieve file paths from the user. So here we have additional files known as loaddomains.py, passdomains.py, and utilities. Okay, so now what does this load domain does? Basically, we are trying to say if a user decides that they want to provide a file path where they have thousands or let's say millions of domains they have pulled out from a recon, then they should be able to provide that file path. And of course, when you provide that file path, this has to be loaded to the tool to be able to perform the DNS resolution lookup and so on. So let's say we provided a file path. There's something that has to load that file path to our tool to enable our tool run and get the necessary DNS record information we are looking up for to that specific domain that is associated in that file. So that's where we brought this. So here we defined a function and we called a variable name or parameter to be a file path. Then we try an exception to say we open the file path. It should read it as a file, okay, as F. Then return line, then strip. So basically, why are we using strip is that there might be white spaces. There might be, previously when we did the ping spy, we stated where spaces could exist, right? And this can conflict the tool to throw errors when it's trying to run the DNS lookup. So we want to strip those white spaces and of course, make the domains that are in that file to be very, very unique and of course treated as individual domains without any errors. Then if the file is not found, there should be an exception that the file was not found. So example, let's say we provided the wrong path. The tool will tell us that, okay, these domains cannot be loaded because the specific file path which you provided for me is not known or cannot be found. Now, after this has been loaded, we want to pass the domain, okay? Now, before we talk about pass domain, let's go to utils, okay? Then let's close this. Let's open main.py. Now, you can see here, I commented this out during the debug process. So that's the essence of the utils. Where's the utils? Okay, so these utils, okay, we have, taken care of this, cleaning of the www that exists, the HTTPS and so on. That's the essence of these utils. So here we're saying clean the domain from the domain that will be parsed, right? So if there is this URL pattern in the domain, you can see if URL pattern, which is this in domain, then pass this, okay? Then the domain itself. Then domain equals to parse.net lookup. So this is, network location, not network lookup. So net location, okay, of the, this that was parsed, which is this variable name, okay, which is the URL parsed the domain. So net lookup. Else, the domain should be split. Now, this here is due to this, okay? Now, when you do recon, you'll be pulling a lot of gibberish data that contains both domain, file path, directory paths, and so on. So these things can conflict if we do not specify this. Okay, so this here, the index of 0 means anything that ends here after here will be ignored. Okay, so it splits this off and only just takes this. So anything from here, all this // will be ignored because the area of focus we are looking up is this amazon.com or pentestmag.com. Now, once that is done, it removes slashes or paths manually. Okay. Then if there is any www, if present or /, now we're using regress. So you have to install this package, okay, RE, which is the regress. So the domain, if there's any regress like this, www and dot. It should remove it and of course pass the variable name domain. Then of course we have cases where we have, let's say, we have this. Is there Facebook? Facebook is here. Okay, let's say www dot google. Okay, dot google.com. So this is in capital letter, right? So what this basically does is that it now returns the domain to lower. So converts any domain that is in capital letter to lowercase for consistency. So this also makes the tool to, run efficiently without any, glitch or issues or errors. Now, when we come to the patch domain, okay, remember we have this function, clean domain, right? So we now call this pass domain, which loads, domains from load domain file, right? We import that. We call the function. Then from the utilities, we import the clean domain function. So this clean domain function, now we check, for this we check the OS path if the file domain input, then print that the file path was detected, then raw load, we call the variable name which loads the raw data and loads it from the file the way it is. Then we now return this, we call this clean function, okay? So we now call clean function. We said for D, for D in the raw data, which is this, okay? We just called a variable name D that points to this raw data, and the raw data loads the domains, from the file path, calling this function. So if this, this clean function should, run this code in utilities, all these codes, and remove any inconsistency depending on what was defined here, and should remove them, and of course for the in the raw data. Now, this is if we are passing a file. However, if we are passing multiple domains, like we have 2 or 3 domains, we just want to look up the DNS record, right? Now, there is a characteristic known as a semicolon that will be detected. So if a semicolon is detected, it shows that multiple domains are being looked up, or should we say the DNS record of multiple domains are being looked up. So what it does is that it returns the clean function again, that domain for domain in the domain input, then split it, okay? Of course, we want to split it as long as there's a semicolon. We don't want to treat all the domains as a single domain. We want to separate them individually. Then if there are white spaces, like when we type the domain, we put a semicolon, so we put a comma, then we, type another domain, we put a tab spacing. So we want to strip any white spaces, okay, that exist after we have typed something like this. Let's say we type let's say we type www.x.com, okay, then we put space like this, right? Then we type another domain, titanic.com, like that. So these are white space, right? So we want to clean this white space and treat them individually, right? So that's the essence of why we are using this domain.strip. Then lastly, we also want to consider the fact that what if the user has the, concept of just providing only a single domain. So let's say we just want to look up for only FixitGearWare.com, right? We don't want to complicate issues by, treating it as a batch text file or as multiple domains. So we also want to give the tool the flexibility to run for single domains and of course look up this information and tell the user this DNS information that is being looked up. And finally, after we have created these 2 files and functions that are necessary, we came down to, these 3 files and the functions that are necessary. We came down to the main.py and we removed this. Okay, so we'll be removing this. Okay, then we print a normal function that, okay, we are printing the DNS Resolving Tool. Then we request, domain input, which we have declared the variable name. Then we call the input function, okay, to accept whatever information the user provides. So then pass the input, domain input for domains in domains, print resolving the domains, the DNS record information, DNS info domain. So this we are calling the DNS info function in the DNS info.py file. Okay, so that will now print, that will now print this DNS records. And of course, tell us for A records is this, for quadruple A record is this, for canonical names, and so on, and for name servers. Okay. So once that is printed, we can now quietly look up, the informations necessary we are looking for when we are trying to resolve these DNS records belonging to these various domains. And of course, get whatever information we want to pull out from and further proceed with various offensive related tasks or penetration testing activities we want to carry out. So that sums it up for this tool, which has to do with DNS resolution or pulling DNS record to various specific domains. So now let's demonstrate this tool and show you how it works. So we close this to create more spaces. So we copy this, the file path where the target exists, which is this one. Okay. So here you can see we have multiple concepts which we tried here. So we tried multiple concepts to put these various domains. We put for Facebook, put in HTTPS for FixitGearWare.com, no W, no HTTPS. For X, we put www, no HTTPS. For BOA, just a normal. Then for Google, we use a capital letter. For USA.gov, can just make this HTTP. Okay, just to try the various characteristics. Then for Pentest Mag, you can see the file path. And for Amazon, we put a specific product, tokens, and other necessary information associated with that product. Okay, so this various crazy stuff is, we are just mimicking basically how the raw data of passive recons associated with domains related to a specific target can be pulled out from the internet, being a gibberish data, not refined, not clear. So you don't have to start, performing regress actions to filter out information. Just push the raw data and our tool will be able to filter out the necessary garbage that is not, the unnecessary garbage that is in that file and just focus on the domain itself. So let's now run the main.py. We run the tool. Now, for example, let's say we want to provide for FixitGearWare.com a usual, or should we say a normal domain. We'll say Fixit. Sorry. Now it's in capital letter, right? So we say FixitGearWare.com. See what's going to happen. Good. Now you can see, although we provided a capital letter here, it pushed the domain, to maintain consistency, got our Cloudflare IP address, resolved our A records, that these two IPs are associated with ours, resolved our quadruple A records, resolved our MX records, then as well pull our name server records and other TXT record associated with us. Then other informations that are not public, or should we say that are not visible to the public internet. It said that those informations, looking up for them actually failed. Okay. Now, this is just a single domain. What if we want to run multiple domains and we want to be inconsistent about them? Okay. So let's say we run again. So we say FixitGearWare.com. Okay. Then we say, you can see we give spacing, right? We say x.com and we say https w.facebook. Okay, we hit enter. So you can see the modalities we used here. We used various inconsistency. Here we use capital letter. Here we use HTTPS. Here we use HTTPS www, then small, capital, like made it random. And you can see that despite we made it random, all these records were looked up. You can see it downgraded everything to lowercase and of course try to resolve their DNS record. So this was the concept we thought about, knowing how gibberish data can be when you pull them out from the public internet that is associated with your specific target or organization you're pen testing for. So these can lead to various inconsistency and complications. And if we don't factor in this, ideas or concept, then auto recon your DNS record becomes, difficult. Okay, so we considered all these factors, looked at all these dimensions and said, okay, this is how we're going to build this tool that irrespective of whatever you do or whatever you provide, it's going to pull the records and give you the DNS informations about that specific target or domain name which you have provided. Now, let's now run the one that is associated with this target. You can see we have different file paths, right? And you can see product and so on, right? Now, this is for the batch text file. You're going to see what's going to happen. So irrespective of the gibberish data that exists in these various domains, it's going to cut them out and just look up the DNS record of the domain names. Okay. And of course, print out those results on your terminal in a very fine-grained manner that allows you to now read these records and information and analyze things that you need to look up, from the DNS information you pulled out. And of course, further your penetration testing activities with these various information which you have gotten. So now we run the tool again. We come to main.py, we run. Now we provide a path which is, in our D drive and this, right? And we hit enter. And you can see that here we have different inconsistency, right? But despite we have this different inconsistency, the tool still run them and of course put the DNS record that is associated with the various targets which you have provided in this text file. Now, if we go back here, I want to leave this one up here so you can see. So if we go back here, right, you can see detected file input and told us the file path, right? Then of course telling us the IP is resolved to this. And we have the DNS record information for Facebook. It told us this, the quadruple A records. Of course, there is no canonical names. It was hidden. For the MX record was pulled out. The name server record, you can see it was pulled out. The TXT record as well was pulled out. Then after the other records were looked up and there was no response, it gave us the reason why this happened. And of course, the CA record was pulled out, which is the digisat.com that provides the digital certificate for Facebook. And of course, the special hash account keys. Now, if you look at here, also FixitGearWare.com, just a normal domain provided. It looked it up, gave us our IP address, A records, quadruple A records, and so on. Then you come down here, you can see for X.com, there was www, it stripped it out and of course went for X, gave us the necessary information, and the ones that cannot be looked up was, portrayed here as well, that these informations are not, able to respond to the DNS resolution concept or information that is being requested. Then we can see we have the BOA, right? There was no www, right? Went well. Then you can see for Google, where is Google? Good. So you can see we used that capital letter here, but it downgraded it here. And of course, got the IP address, the A records, and all the informations we, think is necessary for us to have or that it can be able to reach. Then here for USA.gov, we use HTTP, right? It stripped it out and of course looked up the domain USA.gov, got the informations as well and displayed back to us. And of course, the name servers associated with that domain was, displayed back to us in our terminal. Then same thing for Pentest-Mag. Yeah, so where's Pentest-Mag? So you can see here, we have all this gibberish data, but once it got here, all this was stripped off. And the domain itself was what was looked up, its DNS record or DNS information. And you can see it printed the IP address, the A records, and of course the MX record as well. And if you look at the name server, it's Cloudflare. And of course the TXT record as well was printed back to us. The SOA record, the rest were not gotten. Of course, you can see the various certificate authority records here. We have issueworld, comodoka.com, DigiSat, Let's Encrypt, PKI, SSL, Comodoka, DigiSat, Let's Encrypt, PKI, SSL.com. Okay, so these are very important. You want to understand, the various digital certificates, SSL certificate that these various domains are using. And of course, you can further, try to see what you can do for those who are very good at exploiting SSL to see if the certificate has expired, if, you can issue a certificate on behalf of the organization. And of course, if you can do that, it's quite dangerous, right? You can issue out a malicious certificate that points to a server where you can steal users' information and credentials as well. Then, of course, we have for Amazon. You can see that Amazon has a much longer gibberish data, but everything was filtered out and Amazon was looked up. So you can see the various name servers. You can see the various TXT record. You can see the SOA for Amazon, then the SROV and so on were not able to be pulled out. Okay, so that's all with this concept of this tool, and rounds up the second series of the 3-part segment. So in our third series, we are not going to do any live coding. We're not going to do any coding demonstration. We're going to package a full auto recon tool, and we're going to break down the tool and explain to you what you should do after you have gotten the information using that tool. And we're very inspired and we're very motivated to show you all this, because in cybersecurity, we believe at FixitGearWare Security that everything has to do with fundamentals. As a matter of fact, we are not a fan of auto recon tools. Like hunting bugs, looking for vulnerabilities is not something you should do using recon tools. Okay, certain things are very good to use recon tools, like pulling domain informations, looking up for name server records, and so on. But when it comes to testing the real vulnerability, you have to understand how things work, how things are, and how you can, look out for things you can exploit. Then if you're able to see things, the way they are, in cases where you have like thousands of payloads to now test, to see which of the payload is able to bypass the security mechanism implemented by these various organizations' security experts. That's where your auto recon should now, that's where your auto tooling should now come in. Okay, so it's not like when people release tool, you just rush and pick up the tool and install and start firing up to infrastructures you're pen testing. You're also not helping by doing so, because those things will overload the server of those targets. And of course, they become so frustrated. They block your IP address and you find yourself waiting for days to be able to pen test the target again. And by the time you wait and wait and wait, someone else might have discovered those bugs, report them, and end the money. So understand the fundamentals, know what is necessary in terms of testing bugs, know where auto recon tools are important, and of course, know where you should avoid auto recon tools entirely and just do manual approach to pen test the target. So with that being said, we would round up this section. We want to say thank you for those who have been subscribing as well. Thank you. We appreciate you. We've been seeing your performances and how you've been showing your love and support to us. We appreciate you. And do have an amazing weekend. Spend time with your loved ones. Build up some skill set. Keep studying. Keep practicing. And of course, don't forget to take breaks in between anyway. Whenever you're tired, because we also do take breaks. Whenever I'm tired, I always take breaks. I don't work myself till I burn out. So if I'm tired, I sleep, I play games like chess, I do whatever I want to do just to keep myself, a bit relaxed. So always learn to take breaks in between works and tasks. And if you have anything you are not clear about, join our Discord, ask any questions. We'll be able to share with you to the best of our knowledge, because we don't know everything anyway. Nobody knows everything. But whatever we know to the best of our knowledge, we're going to share with you, explain to you, and tell you things you need to do to get possible answers that you find challenging or you don't know the solutions to. So with that being said, until next time, see you and bye for now.